Welcome back. Today we're gonna work with iPSK. So we're having two virtual wireless controller and two ISE nodes. We're gonna work on Cisco 9800 series. We're gonna test our iPSK. So the idea of the iPSK is that in case we're having a password and we need to push different password for different group of users and different policies through ISE. So let's get started about these points. So this is our main wireless controller. We already have one AP joined to this, and we're gonna start the configuration. In general, we're gonna need to create a the SSID through PSK. We're gonna need to add the ISE devices in the controller. So here we're gonna add our ISE node. Let's call it ISE 01. Then 1141 is the IP. Okay, and the pre-shared key that we're gonna add between the controller and the ISE. Okay, this is the main ISE. We're gonna add the secondary ISE also. Then 1142 and the password. I'm using a complex password here. Okay. Then we're gonna create a group for both ISE to be in one group. Let's call it ISE group. And then we're gonna hit for AAA methods. We're needing authorization and accounting for this part. So for name, let's go for ISE authorize. The type will be network, and group, we're gonna select our group ISE here, hit apply. Accounting, let's call it ISE account, and this type of gonna be identity, adding ISE group, and we're set for the AAA. Now we can create our PSK SSID. I'm gonna call it IP Sensei -IPSK. Hit enable. So in security, we're gonna use WPA2. We're gonna enable MAC filter, and then we're gonna select our authorization rule that we created. In the authentication key, we're gonna disable the 802.1x and enable PSK. Here we're gonna give one PSK, as you can see, this one. Then hit advance. In P2P blocking action, we need to allow private groups. Okay, and that's it for now. Then we're gonna create our policy for the APs. So usually what I do is I create different policy for different SSIDs that I'm using. So let's call this IP Sensei IPSK. Hit enable. In access policy, we're gonna select our VLAN. Usually you can push the VLAN from ISE or you can select it here. Either way, both of them it's gonna work. So here in AAA, enable AAA, and we're gonna select our accounting. Okay. So our main policy is set. We're gonna create our tag profile. So let's call this IPSK tag. We're gonna select our SSID that we created and assign it the policy that we created. So hit OK, apply. So the last thing that we need to do is we can go through advanced or basic in wireless setup, but for now I'm gonna use the basic setup. I'm gonna hit and say this is like location IP Sensei. Okay, there's no issues about the name. It's based on whatever you want and whatever you need to do. So in WLAN, we're gonna select our WLAN that we created and the policy that we created. Everything is set, so add And then we have our AP. We need to select the AP and add it to this group, and here it is. Once I hit apply, the AP is going to reboot. So if we can check here, you're gonna find that the AP is not joined now, and we can check it here until it reboots. So give it some time. So now we're gonna start the things that related to our ISE. In ISE, we're gonna need to create an identity. We're gonna add our MAC address for the device, and then we're gonna create it inside a group and add the wireless controller in it. And then we can test. So there are a couple of things. So we can start with the network device. Okay, let's add this controller. Let's call it 9800-01. We're gonna give it the IP that we have. It's .51. For location, I can mention this like a data center, IP sensei-DC. Give it that center, and device type, I'm gonna hit and say this is wireless controller. Perfect. So we're gonna select it. The last thing that we need to do is add our radius pre-share key, the one that we gave it actually to the same controller in AAA settings, and we're all set for now. So in administration, identity groups, endpoints, let's call this IT-IPSK. Hit save. Let's try in case we can add the MAC address here. I think this is the MAC address. Yes, correct. So we added our MAC address to the group, and we're all set in this part. So now we're gonna create our policy results. We need to add our condition in authorization profiles. Let's call this IT-IPSK. Okay, so we already assigned the VLAN there in the SSID, so here I don't need to create any SSID, any VLAN for it. So we're going for our advanced attributes. We're gonna add 2 attributes here. Okay. So here we're gonna add our, let's do it from the start. So here we need to add our authorization profiles. So we're gonna create a new profile. Okay, let's call it IT-IPSK. For VLAN, it's gonna be pushed from the controller. So here I don't need to assign a different VLAN, but we need to create 2 attributes. Okay, so it's Cisco AV pair, and it's gonna be PSK-mode equals ASCII. And the second one will be the password that's gonna be used and to apply it to our role. So Cisco AV pair, and we're gonna say PSK equals and the password that we need to assign. Submit. So now it's ready. We can create our policy sets. So usually what I do is I don't like to use the default policy. So I will create a new policy and I will say this is wireless policy sets, or let's say wireless policies. Okay, in condition is I would like to assign this as here, let's say that device type. Okay, and we're gonna select this is wireless controller. Okay, and then here it's gonna be default network and save. So we added our policy here. Then we're gonna do is create our authentication authorization policy. Here it's gonna be deny. remove this, deny access, and we're adding here map. Let's add the conditions. So we're gonna select wireless map. Okay, use. So wireless map, and here we're gonna select our internal endpoints. So our authentication is ready. Here we're gonna create our authorization. Okay, so let's call this IP sensei underscore IT underscore IPSK. In conditions, we're gonna call by the SSID. Okay, so here what I like is I like to use end with, and in the attribute we're gonna need to add the same SSID that we're having, or the one that we created. So I'm just gonna copy paste the name. Okay. Duplicate, and here we're gonna recall our identity group, the one that we created. Okay. Let me remove the attribute that we added here, points. So identity group. Okay, so we created it as IT IPSK use. Okay, and in profile we're gonna add the profile that we created, the IT IPSK. Okay, and hit save. So it's successful now. We can go to our live logs in radius. Okay, I'm gonna hit refresh every 3 seconds for the last, let's say, 5 minutes. Let's go to our device and test it. And we can select it from here. So it's associating. Let's check our live logs. Connected. As you can see here, the device hit in the endpoints. This is the endpoint. The authentication policy is map. The authorization policy is the one that we created, IP Sensei IT IPSK, and authorization profile is the IT policy. So device took an IP from the VLAN through the PSK password that we created through ISE. Thank you for watching, and see you for the next time.